This idea, and actually there are plenty of examples in science, of course, in the history of science, that a language for talking about the world actually affects what we perceive, what we see, what we think happened, seems very striking. And it feels very hard to get beyond that. Do you think we can? Do you think we should try to? Do you think science is successful at trying to do that?
I don't see what's wrong with just embracing the diversity of different representations and different languages and different approaches, right? So, for example, for someone to ask, what is the best language for X? To me, that's like saying, what is the best tool in your toolbox? Well, ideally, I want a toolbox that has both a screwdriver and a hammer and a saw, and neither of them are the best tool. Which one is the best tool depends on the job you want to do. Languages are also like that. They're human made tools, they're made for certain purposes. And so, if we keep a diversity of languages, a diversity of representations, a diversity of theories around, that allows us the best chance of actually making progress, of actually enriching our understanding more and more, and having the best tool for the job when we need it, rather than just saying, this is one and everything else we don't need.
It's easy to suppose that languages are about trying to convey information. Now, I'm sure that's a far too simplistic a picture, but in science, there is this notion that there is information about the world that we can get hold of. And what's striking about recent science across the board, from biology to physics, and other fields, and obviously computer science, is this notion of information seems to have become central. Some people are using an informational perspective to try to understand the fundamentals of quantum mechanics. And one way of thinking about that is the question of whether information about the world is fully formed in some sense, or whether the world can give us answers to all the questions we might ask it. And that there are people who say perhaps that's the problem we're confronting in quantum mechanics, that actually we can ask more questions of the world than it can give us answers to. Whether or not that's right, I wonder, Avshalom, whether you could say something about this rise of an informational perspective on understanding the world. What's information about?
Yeah, it goes. I like to mention one of the most fruitful paradoxes in the history of physics. This is that of Maxwell's demon. We know that you cannot reduce entropy without without investing energy. And Maxwell, who was such a genius both in electromagnetism and thermodynamics and so on, once wrote, it was not in a paper but in a letter, and that letter was created a paradox for more than 100 years. Imagine a tiny demon within a closed system in which there is a partition and a very small hole, and that demon monitors the motion of air molecules from one side to the other. And he showed that without much energy, that demon can accumulate heat on one side and cold on the other side and violate the second law of thermodynamics. And it took at least a century. Kelvin didn't have the good answer for that from Smoluchowski, and then only in the 20th century, Briand and Szilard found in order to gain information, you have to invest energy. And the energy that you invest would increase entropy. Why am I mentioning all this? Because it turned out that information is something which has been neglected by physics for long. Once you bring it, indeed, you find out. But then I'll come back to my original statement. Information is valuable because it tells you about something. It's not about itself. Once again, let me mention some traditions nowadays even. Think good and it will be good. Thought creates reality, which is dangerous. I mean, some quack doctors tell you that if you just think positively, everything will be fine. It's dangerous. In some cases, it is correct, but people who go too far can cause a lot of trouble. So I would say the following. Just I'll give you an example. I was walking next to the river here, and there was a toad, and I almost stepped on it, and it's jumped. We have different perceptual mechanisms. Or if I think about a mosquito or fly, amazing. Now let's take the fly or the mosquito. He tries to bite me, and I try to kill it. We use different perceptual tools. Still, we interact, which means that there is something out there and there are different ways to approach it, and that we strive to make it more and more precise. But the thing that information is about is there. This is the reality. I think that this is the essence of science, and we should keep it. We should guard it.
I think
Church.
the Maxwell's demon thought experiment is really interesting in terms of what it did for information, because of course what the demon is doing is seemingly reducing entropy, so creating a sort of reservoir of stuff that can be used to do work through information, by gathering information about the molecules that are coming in different directions. And it has given rise now to the modern idea that information itself can be used as a kind of fuel for doing things. And there are now experiments that demonstrate this is the case, but that by finding out some information about something, you can actually use that to create some kind of change. So it doesn't break the second law of thermodynamics, but it really centralizes information as, something that seems kind of fundamental in some sense to the universe. Lera, I wanted to ask whether this kind of crude idea that languages are about conveying information between one another, I suspect that's too simplistic. What are languages actually? What do we think languages are actually doing in terms of information? Is it just a tool for transmitting that, or is there something else going on?
Well, about 80% of our verbal experience actually happens inside our heads. So not outside to other people. About 80, yeah. So people report that they spend a lot of time in their own minds producing language. It's not equal across the population. Some people talk to themselves more than others. But when we study language, usually what we study are the things that people say out loud or the things that they write down, which means there's a huge amount that we're not actually getting access to. Right? Most of what people's linguistic experience we're not getting access to. But a lot of that is for thinking, for processing. Often people report thinking to themselves in language when they're angry or frustrated and trying to work through some problem, or they're puzzled or confused. Very rarely do they say, the mood I'm in is calm and relaxed, and that's why I'm using language in my mind, right? It's almost always some kind of active mood. You're having an argument, maybe with someone else, maybe with yourself, maybe you're working out some problem. But I think a theme I want to return to is this question about what science is for and whether it's about prediction or whether it's really about understanding. So it's really good at prediction, right? We've been able to predict all kinds of incredible things and make incredible progress. But I don't know if that is the same as understanding. So Wittgenstein gives this example. He says, suppose you were to teach someone the Fibonacci sequence. Simple thing. And you ask them, do you understand it? They say, yes, I understand it. How do you test if they really understand it? Well, you ask them to produce a bunch of numbers. So they produce a bunch of numbers and the sequence seems right. And let's say you let it go for 20 numbers, for 100 numbers, for 1,000 numbers, and it's still good. Right? They get to a millionth one and suddenly the pattern changes. Now, up until that point, you felt like they had understood the thing that you had in your mind, and they were producing the thing that made it evident that they had that understanding. But just by being able to observe, make those observations even millions of times, doesn't actually guarantee that they have achieved the same understanding. There's something else that we need to have other than predictability to know that we have truly understood something, or that someone else has truly understood something, or that our theory has understood something.
Yeah.
So I think we have to keep those things separate.
And that is a huge issue, of course, in education, that being able to produce results and get through exams doesn't guarantee understanding. But how on earth do you find out if not that way?
To continue watching this video, click the link in the top left or in the description below. Or visit iai.tv for more debates and talks from the world's leading thinkers on today's biggest ideas.